Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Indah Karunia. I'm from Economic Education Class A 2017. And my research is the effect of fulfilling learning needs on learning outcomes with learning motivation as an intervening variable during distance learning for undergraduate students at University of Jakarta. And background of this research are: there is COVID-19 virus in Indonesia since March 2020, and then the latest data for COVID-19 suffer is 4 million cases on December 16, 2021. So, government implementing of distance learning in Indonesian school, and then there are different learning needs between distance learning and school learning usually. So, the question of this research are: first, is there a direct effect of fulfilling learning needs on learning outcomes of undergraduate student economic education during distance learning period? Secondly, is there a direct effect of fulfilling learning needs on learning motivation for undergraduate student economic education during distance learning period? Thirdly, is there a direct effect of learning motivation on the learning outcomes for undergraduate student economic education during distance learning period? Fourthly, is there an indirect effect of the fulfilling learning needs on learning outcomes with learning motivation as an intervening variable for undergraduate student economic education during distance learning period? And purpose of this research are: first, to know and analyze the effect of fulfilling learning needs on learning outcomes for undergraduate student economic education during distance learning period. Secondly, to know and analyze the effect of fulfilling learning needs on learning motivation for undergraduate student economic education during distance learning periods. Thirdly, to know and analyze the effect of learning motivation on learning outcomes for undergraduate student economic education during distance learning periods. And fourthly, to know and analyze the effect of learning motivation on learning outcomes for undergraduate student economic education with learning motivation as intervening variable during distance learning period. Benefit of this research: theoretical benefits to be a reference and resources of information to build knowledge about some topic, and then practical benefits for researcher to build up knowledge of this topic, and then for college to enhance some insight for policy that will be taken about this topic. And literature review for this research: for learning outcome variable, there is Bloom's taxonomy. There are 6 states in cognitive domain. Those are knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. So, learning outcomes is academic achievement obtained by students after completing their study period or graduate, which is expressed in the form of test score or study evaluation scores. And for learning needs variable, there is hierarchy of needs Maslow theory, which states that 5 categories of human needs dictate an individual's behavior. So learning needs is which needs that must be met by someone to be able to carry out learning activities. And for learning motivation variable, there is McClelland's theory that every person has one of 3 main driving motivators: achievement, affiliation, and power. So learning motivation is source of energy or encouragement that causes a person to carry out learning activities to achieve learning outcomes. There is theoretical framework and hypothesis development. There is learning needs as independent variable, and then learning outcomes is dependent variable, and learning motivation as an intervening variable. So, there are hypotheses of this research. Hypothesis 1, there is an effect of fulfilling learning needs on learning outcomes for undergraduate student economic education in distance learning period. Hypothesis 2, there is an effect of learning motivation on learning outcomes for undergraduate student economic education in distance learning periods. Hypothesis 3. There is an effect of learning needs on learning outcomes for undergraduate student economic education in distance learning period. And hypothesis 4. There is an indirect effect of learning needs on learning outcome with learning motivation as an intervening variable for undergraduate student economic education in distance learning period. Time and place of this research. Time of research at during July 2021 and place of research at State University of Jakarta, Rawamangun Street, Pulau Gadung, East Jakarta. The method in this research is survey method, and kind of this research is quantity research of primary. Population of this research is undergraduate student economic education, and sample of this research is undergraduate student economic education as 2018 until 2019. And then development of instrument for learning outcomes variable. Conceptual definition. Learning outcomes is academic achievement obtained by students after completing their study period or graduate, which is expressed in the form of test, score, or study evaluation scores. And operational definition. The value obtained using a learning outcomes assessment test in the form of summative learning outcomes in 113 semester. An indicator of learning outcomes for this research is semester performance index of 113. And then development of instrument for learning needs variable. Conceptual definition. Learning needs is which needs that must be met by someone to be able to carry out learning activities. And operational definition. Indicator of learning needs consists of teaching materials, digital era learning tools, digital intermediaries, and learning plays. And for sub-indicator, there are print textbook, ebook, PowerPoint, study videos, computer, notebook or laptop, smartphone, headset or earphone, quota, signal, Wi-Fi, apps, and then learning place, privacy and conducive or public and crowded. And then for learning motivation variable, conceptual definition. Learning motivation is source of energy or encouragement that causes a person to carry out learning activities to achieve learning outcomes. And operational definition. Indicator of learning motivation include an interest in learning, having a desire to achieve the target of success in learning, having tenacity in learning, and having future goals. And then sub-indicator, those are interest in the subjects that they like or interest in all subjects. And then to achieve high success targets or to achieve standard success targets, tenacity in learning difficulties or tenacity in achieving high targets in learning, and then have a defined future or not having yet defined a future. This research used primary data so that it used Google Form to collect data. This technique was chosen in order to get valid data according to actual conditions. This research data analysis processing technique uses SPSS and Microsoft Excel. For classic assumption tests, there are normality tests, heteroscedasticity tests, and linearity tests. And for hypothesis tests, those are t-tests and coefficient of determination tests, and descriptive analysis and path analysis. Respondent profile of this research were undergraduate students of economic education as 2018 until 2019. Population of this research is 220 respondents, and the sample use is 140 respondents. Data description of learning needs. For minimum score is 21, for maximum score is 45, summary is 5123. And then for teaching materials need 25%. For tools of digital era is 30%, and intermediaries digital is 26%, and for learning place is 17%. Data description of learning motivation: minimum score is 12 and maximum score is 24, and summary is 2577. For interest in learning need 29%, and having for target success need 34%, and having tenacity in learning need 36%. And then assumption tests. There are normality tests. Based on the result of the Kolmogorov-Smirnov one sample test, a significance value of 0.2. The value is greater than 0.05. So it can be concluded that the data is normally distributed. And heteroskedasticity test. Based on the results of the heteroskedasticity test, a significance of 0.873 was obtained, which was greater than 0.05. It can be concluded that there is no heteroskedasticity in data. And then linearity test. Based on the results from the ANOVA table, it is known that the deviation from linearity value of 0.052 is greater than 0.05. So it can be concluded that there is a linear relationship between learning needs and learning outcomes. And hypothesis 1 test. Based on this calculation, the value of T count is 2.979, which is greater than T table. The standardized coefficient beta value is 0.276. So it can be concluded that there is a significant positive effect of learning needs on learning motivation. So hypothesis 1 accepted. And hypothesis 2 test. Based on this calculation, that the effect of learning motivation on learning outcomes is 0.04 with significance of 0.968. The standardized coefficient beta value is 0.004. It can be concluded that there is no influence of learning motivation on learning outcomes. So hypothesis 2 rejected. Hypothesis 3 test. Based on this calculation, it is known that the value of learning needs is 2.054 with a significance of 0.042. So it can be concluded that there is a significant positive effect between learning needs and learning outcomes. Then hypothesis 3 accepted. Hypothesis 4 test. Based on this calculation, it is known that there is an indirect effect of learning needs on learning outcomes mediated by learning motivation of 20.3%. So it can be concluded that there is a significant positive effect of learning needs on learning outcomes with learning motivation as an intervening variable. Then hypothesis 4 accepted. And then the conclusion of this research. First, there is no significant effect of learning needs on the learning outcomes for undergraduate student economic education in 113 semester during the distance learning period. 2. There is a significant positive effect of learning needs on the learning motivation for undergraduate student economic education in semester 113. So that more the learning needs are fulfilled, the learning motivation will increase. And 3, there is a significant positive effect of learning motivation on the learning outcomes for undergraduate student economic education, semester 113. So the higher the learning motivation, the higher learning outcomes. And then there is a significant indirect effect of learning needs on learning outcome with learning motivation as an intervening variable for undergraduate student economic education in 113 semester in distance learning period. So I think enough for my presentation. I'm sorry for my weakness. Thank you for attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.